Today, I thought we'd talk about a scourge that all of us has had the misfortune of dealing with, and I'm sure many in our audience have as well. Landlords. Whether you think they're a necessary evil, parasites, or reputable business people, they have a long and complicated history and some truly horrific examples. So tonight, we take a look at landlords on Deep Fat Fried.
Deep Fat Fried!
2022 will be the year that we literally drown you in content. 156 standard 30-minute episodes of Deep Fat Fried, 52 long-form episodes of Deep Fat Fried, 37 episodes of Dank D&D, live episodes of Onion Nuggets every Wednesday, new Cinema for Cynics reviews, Fighting Boys, Abandon Hope, Ideology, Ask Hollywood Love, and The Grease Trap. And even if you manage to watch it all, we still have a massive back catalog of old content that's going to blow your mind. We have got metric tons of old commentaries, grease traps, mountains of Deep Fat Fried episodes. We got oceans of flash fries. We got valleys of Abandon Hope and Ideology and other miscellaneous content you could watch for weeks, if not months, straight. And with all this content, both new and old, we have realized that it is time to simplify our Patreon. Yes! Right now, our Patreon is split into a $10 tier and a $5 tier. Now, this has long aggrieved us because our philosophy in this company is that simplicity is best. How do we create so much content? We keep it simple. We keep it streamlined. We commit to a process, and we constantly fine-tune that process. Anything that wastes time, we get rid of. Having two patron tiers is not in line with our philosophy. So, we've decided to unify into a single tier at the price point of $7. Join the Pessimist Productions Patreon today, because we are looking very forward to entertaining you all in 2022.
Boo!
Boo!
Boo, landlords! Boo!
Boo! Boo! But seriously, boo.
Yeah, we say this, but yeah, TJ, only one among us has been a lord of land here.
Oh, yeah?
That's true.
Yes.
That is true. I was regrettably a member of the landlord class for a number of years.
And I remember Paul lived very well in them years. Like, Paul, it was every time you go to see Paul, Cavoisier, caviar. Oh, yes!
Like,
Pass the Cavoisier.
Oh, being a landlord is a fine occupation.
pass me another cocktail of tenant's tears.
Yes. Can't find good tenants these days.
So,
Tears are not nearly salty enough.
excuse me. Jeez Louise. Let's start with a little bit of historical context. Landlords are not a new thing. Modern kind of landlord arrangements have their roots, in kind of like medieval times, obviously. Landlords obviously existed before medieval times. People have needed places to live, and people have, had various concepts of ownership of land well before that.
Right. I mean, it's like kind of difficult sometimes, like talking about old societies, because like so much has evolved and changed since then that it's like we bring a lot of modern conceptions to things like that.
Sure.
And it's like, well, ownership wasn't the same thing as it was back. I mean, if you look at this feudal pyramid of power here, you see like merchants are way down at the bottom. And obviously merchants are the ones that really climbed that fucking ladder of social mobility to like new heights, to where I would say the merchant class is now pretty much at the top of our society.
So before our more modern notions of private property arose, which if you think about it, like just the idea that a commoner can buy land is a relatively new idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you just maintained land for the Lord, landlord,
because
right?
the nobility has always known that, that's the only thing they're not making more of is land, right? And the population keeps going up, and the speculative value of that land is just forever going to go up and up and up over time. And, they knew this. So,
I mean, well, all value in the world is from at some point derived from like land, because every resource is tethered to it. Like anything you can mine, anything you can grow, it's all tied to land.
Well, land usually had to be like, with nobility, like you were given land, or it was acquired through marriage
or
like
bloodshed.
Yeah, or you took the land. I mean, that's not saying only nobility owned land, but for the most part, yes, that's about the only people that had land.
It's true. Social and economic life in medieval Europe was organized within a system that today is known as feudalism. A lot of people have heard of this. Unlike the nobility, like Scotty said, few peasants had their own land, and many were considered serfs who were legally prohibited from even really leaving the land that they cultivated without a permission slip from the lord. So back in the day, the landlord wasn't just leasing his property, he was leasing you and your whole family, because if you were a serf, your family was expected to live on and continue to develop for the profit of the lord that piece of land in perpetuity.
Oh, Paul, you want to bake some bread? A lot of people on these serfs had to pay the lord for the privilege of baking their own bread.
Mm-hmm. They had to.
This means to control.
Right. They had to sell all of the crops or most of the crops to him, and then if they needed, obviously, and they did, to buy it back, they had to go and buy their own things back from him, because he owned the land. Therefore, he owned everything on the land, including your ass, which is really different. It makes it a whole different job than today.
Also, the wild game on that land too would belong to the lord. Yeah. So figure that one out. You own nothing essentially.
While free peasants could at least move or be married without their permission slips, their circumstances were rarely very much better than total serfs, since most were landless. Landed lords demanded rents from peasants in exchange for the right to work the soil, often paid in labor or with a hefty part of the harvest, usually both, obviously. So you not only paid rent, it was not just about putting a roof over your head back then. It was like your whole life is encapsulated by this one person. They own you. They own the place you live. You got to pay them for the privilege to be there in blood, sweat, and tears. You got to work that land. You get to keep a paltry amount for yourself and maybe sell it, but 99% of it goes to them. And then you got to buy it back from them with whatever meager wages they give you for maintaining the land.
Oh, by the way, the lord's in a dispute with another lord. Now you have to go fight a bunch of other serfs. If you don't, your family will be thrown off the land. You'll die.
Yeah, how dare these other fucking serfs that are enslaved to this other lord?
Of course, yeah.
Let them fight.
We have a dispute. Serfs, go and fight. Other serfs, you fight them. My serfs won the day. Well, handshake, good show, sir.
Yeah, you're just a total bitch to the Lord, basically.
It might.
Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're just your god.
They own your ass. Yeah.
They own every ounce of your ass.
It might sound different than what we have today, but
not as much.
It really
maybe
isn't.
there's like little subterfuges now that didn't exist then.
Being the lord though meant you had to give back in some ways. See, that's a difference. Like lords were actually had to have some accountability. Like peasants wanted holidays, they had those holidays. They would hold feasts for the peasants and shit. Like,
that's still the same shit today. They do gestures of goodwill to make sure they don't get fucking.
What I'm saying is like I say those lords actually had more accountability, because now it's like, oh well, you just need to do that yourself. Take care of yourself. Everyone can take care of themselves, right? It's like
a lot of the stuff. Landlords today, in the same way that these nobles took advantage of the labor of people, landlords today do the same thing. They're taking the money that's given to you for your labor, and they're taking some of that out of your pocket for the privilege of having a roof over your head.
And by the way, you're not being... The person that you're doing that labor for is also still not fairly compensating you. So basically, like, you do your work, and then the people you work for take a giant amount of like the productivity that you created, and just like, that's ours. It's like, okay.
And capitalism doesn't function with equality. Right. Inequality has to be built into the system for it to function. And then
you go home to your place where you're paying another person. So basically, like, we've just like kind of like diversified the roles played by the landlord. We haven't really gotten rid of any of this. It's just like not all one person anymore.
Yeah, essentially that's what it's done.
Now it's just instead of one big dick, it's a series of slightly less big dicks.
It's still a big dick. I mean, think about it.
It adds up to it at the end of the day. You're getting double teamed by the fucking thing. So
if you're renting your fucking forced to sign these insanely lopsided contracts where if you break the lease for any reason, you know what I mean, you're fucking gonna pay out the ass to do it, but they can come up with any number of reasons to boot your ass out that are illegal.
And I mean, like, I obviously peruse like my fucking rental agreements and shit, but I don't ever fucking look at them too closely because I'm just like, she's like, well, shouldn't you read that more? It's like, I already know everything it fucking says. It basically just says we have unlimited rights, you have no rights.
Yeah, the only rights
that's
carved
what
out
every
for
fucking
you.
single lease fucking agreement says. So
I mean, the only rights carved out for you are the ones that are not allowed by law. So like but all those contracts you'll find there's parts of it that most contracts, especially these ones nowadays, have things that are not enforceable, which means like even if the landlord went after you, it wouldn't even be legal. But if you notice in most of those documents, it just says even if that is the case, the rest of the document is valid. So, but any contract is going to be written totally for the advantage of the person that really wants whatever that is that the person giving the contract is doing. So in this case, you want a house.
But what negotiating power do you have?
You have none.
There's no. It's like another one of these fucking areas.
Zero.
It's another one of these areas in the fucking American life where it's like supposedly we're supposed to negotiate a deal. Like you don't like your job, you can find a different job. You don't like your landlord, you can find a different one.
Either way.
Right, but it's like you act like none of these people have any fucking. There's no pressure being applied to them to deal fairly with anybody.
No,
they have insane amounts of advantage. Like a person who has a house for rent has an insane amount of advantages over a person who's
right. They can just say nope, not you, not you, not you. Nope. Yes, maybe you. But I need to look at every personal detail of your life. Every personal detail, dude. To get this place, I had to send the people that own this place a picture of my dog.
Yeah. I just don't want that
wouldn't let me move in unless I sent him a little picture of Dinor, and I was like, all right, there you go. You know, it's just like, fuck you. What business of that is yours? Like, why are you micromanaging my life and shit? And I hate fucking landlords. Anyway, have you guys ever heard, let me ask you a question, as intellectuals, of the rind of Zhao Dedong?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Any gentleman has.
One of the most famous rinds ever, dude.
Yeah, a great rind.
So right before Chinese Communist Party leader Mao Zedong took power, a Mao associate in 1948 proclaimed that the Communist Party's intent was to 30 million landlords and rich peasants will have to be destroyed. Mao, like the Soviets who used NKVD, KGB forces to carry out political persecutions, mobilized the Chinese peasantry itself to rise up, kill the landlords and other perceived privileged classes. It came in 1946 after Mao's communists won the hearts of millions of Chinese poor and upper class peasantry, launching a land reform campaign. However, there was one obstacle that stood in the way of their land redistribution efforts: the owners of the land. People's courts, which are pictured here, were held in which peasants were encouraged to accuse the landlords. Sometimes this resulted in like on the spot and immediate executions. This has been called classicide. Ding Zuhui, vice chairman of the Central South Military and Administrative Council, estimated that 15% of China's 50 million landlords and rich peasants had been sentenced to death in this fashion. 25% had been sent to labor reform camps, probably the worst sentence, honestly, for remolding through manual work, and 60% to participation in production work under supervision. Not all of those sentenced to death were actually executed, and therefore there's no way of knowing the exact number of performed executions. What followed was the Agrarian Reform Law of 1950 in China, resulting in the property of rural landlords being confiscated and redistributed, which fulfilled a promise to the peasants and smashed a class identified as feudal. Land seized from landlords was brought under collective ownership, resulting in the creation of agricultural production cooperatives. Now, this is not to say anything.
Yeah, that went perfectly.
Of Mao Zedong's overall brutality during this period. But you can see what I wanted to kind of show was these people were not coerced into this. These peasants.
No, this was the peasants were more than happy to fucking be given this task. Like, oh, okay.
This was
it
not
just,
because
it just sucks
they
that
were
it had
afraid.
to come from like some higher authority of the land and for them to fucking actually do it. But
these people were not like doing this under duress. They weren't afraid that like Zhao Dedong was going to kill them if they didn't kill this person. They were happy to sit here and go like, hey, you that's been exploiting me my whole fucking life, my whole family. What do you have to say for that? What do you have to say for the hunger in my family and the death in my family? Off with his fucking head. They were happy to do it, right? And Mao, among other things, tapped into that anger. And so landlords are not a popular figure anywhere. And there have been, throughout history, this is probably one of the most, covered. But there have been, uprisings against landlords and feudal lords throughout history that were very bad. The French Revolution was, a good example of this.
Yeah, they had a lot of tax farmers and stuff, and people. And obviously, nobility were killed too. They cut off their heads.
They lopped off the king and the queen's head in front of the fucking palace. I mean, what do you do with that?
I mean, what more do you have to say about? Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, look, if someone has you bent over a fucking barrel your whole life, and you have a chance to fucking strike back, I think that's enticing to a lot of people. Because I mean, a lot of people, like the serfs or peasants or lower class, feel the powerless because they mainly are. These social people occur,
unless a system like this arises that kind of like allows them to exercise the worst angels of their nature in a way that's completely, enticing to them.
This is very appealing to. I mean, look, humans are aggressive animals. So, I mean, to fucking punish someone that you felt is wrong your whole fucking life, you damn right a bunch of people are going to take that opportunity.
I know you like stats, Scotty. So let's take a look at a little bit of stats here.
Sure.
At what renting is like now in the United States.
Nightmare.
Over 10 years, overall rental rates increased 31% in the U.S. Pictured is just how dire the situation was in 2017. So this past year, it has skyrocketed significantly faster. Between 2020 and 2021, the average monthly rent in the U.S. saw a 10% increase. That's the average. Some people saw 20, 25, 30% rent increases in a single year over the course of last year. With how chaotic things have been with the economy, the real wages and inflation, not the stock market, that increase is something many people just can't afford. And so you have record amounts of people being functionally homeless or being on public assistance or in public assisted housing that before were renting an apartment or renting a small home or a duplex or a trailer or something, right? So even this system is now starting to fail in that these landlords have gotten to the point, and I guess inflation has gotten to the point where they have to charge this amount, or they've decided they can squeeze us for this amount, and people can't pay it. People just can't fucking pay it. I mean, what do you do? People can't pay it.
It's highway robbery, dude, because most of these people, especially talk about these mom and pop landlords that people always like to bring up, it's like, if they've already paid off the mortgage or they have a mortgage on the property and you're paying it with your rent, like,
and a lot of people
how's that gone up?
That's where apartments come in. If you can't afford to rent a house or buy your own house, you can get an apartment. Dude, the area that I moved to, we looked at apartments because we're not planning on staying here forever. So we looked at apartments because I've lived in apartments before. Dude, they were more expensive or right on the same line as like a 2 or 3 bedroom house in the area. So it's just like people are fucking... And the people that rent these houses, they're way more picky with who they allow in there. They want to look at your fucking bank statements and they want to see your fucking, the whole shebang. So you got to basically show them your whole asshole and let them probe it for a while. And they go, yes, that tastes fine. You can live here for a year if you sign this incredibly restrictive contract and pay us an absurd amount of money. It's like, that's where we're at. I wish I was joking. So, let's see here. Often the choice is between sucking up a rent increase when it's time to renew your lease or going month to month at a premium while waiting to find a cheaper place, which is getting increasingly unlikely. A land leech made this helpful graphic to explain how many renters can't afford to not accept an increase. Not all of it is accurate, but it's close enough to illustrate how depressing and hopeless the situation. Yeah. So
looking here, a 2-bedroom, 2-bedroom FMR. So I guess what does FMR stand for?
I don't know.
Let's see.
That's the only question I'd have. Okay. So $1,103, 1 bedroom, $892.
Free market rents.
Okay, I guess.
for like HUD users and shit.
Okay, rent affordable to a household relying on Social Security income, $221 a month. That is, I don't know a place in America
You can't.
that
You
you'd
can't
find
even
that.
find like a single attic room above an old Chinese laundry shop in a shitty neighborhood for $221 a month.
Yeah, so there's pretty much nowhere for this person to live. I mean, there's basically like you could probably rent someone's room in a house that is a piece of shit in a bad part of town.
Remember, me and you actually looked at a thing. There was a guy that has a YouTube channel. It's like, I'm gonna look at like these really cheap apartments in Tokyo, and like we were surprised like how many found for like a few $100s a month. We're like, wow. And we thought about it here, and we're like, you would never find a fucking apartment in a major fucking city or even anywhere near it for $200 or $300 a month. But you could do it there.
Not a chance.
Just shows you how dire the situation is here, where it's like people cannot fucking find affordable housing at all. Period.
So let's take a look at some of the worst landlords in history. And I guess go to the next. This is actually the one that we were going to look at. If you want to zoom in on it a little bit, I think you can see it.
Sure.
Oh, this is so disgusting, dude.
This is what landlords would put up on these tenants' walls to justify their rent increase. So
We hope you'll stay with us for a long time to come, but in the event you think about moving, consider the following costs. New deposit, $1,000. Application fee, $60. Telephone transfer, $34. Electricity deposit, $50. Gas deposit, $50. Moving van, $500. Replacement, redecorating, $200. Groceries, $200. Incidentals, dentals, $100. Pet deposit, $800. Average first month's rent, $1,800. Cash up front, $4,794.75. Don't forget to add the days off work, the packing and unpacking, the broken nails, the sore back, and you'll see that it pays to stay settled right where you are. Maybe the rent increase isn't that bad after all.
It is bad. And what's the reason for the rent increase? Oh,
Hey,
you guys want more money?
This is basically just like, look, we got you guys over a barrel because if you try to move, it's gonna cost even more. So you got to give me that fucking money. You should be glad. That's all I'm.
So many
charging
people
you.
are renting now that they just can increase the rents. That's what it is. Like you can't. There's that housing market supply is so tight because they've not built affordable housing in this country since like the mid 2000s.
But man, that Mao, what a terrible guy.
Yeah, he was horrible. Yeah,
What a fucking piece of shit. How dare he with that shit?
I mean, he did some terrible things too, but
He did.
I'm gonna tell you what I just heard about wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna tell you that. Fuck you. I don't care.
I'm not saying that.
Fuck
I
you,
mean,
Scotty.
I don't really think it was either.
Fuck you, Scotty.
okay. Obviously, you got a fucking problem,
Fuck you,
TJ.
Scotty. Sorry.
So let's take a look at some of the worst landlords. And we got to start right here with former president. Well, I guess we don't even do that because they still say President Barack Obama and shit. You still get called president, right?
You get called once you're president. You're president.
Isn't that even fucking worse? That no matter what, he's always going to be President Donald Trump. Oh my god. So we'll start with one of the most prominent ones. President Donald Trump himself here. The Trump empire is built on the same kind of predatory practices that tenants and tenant advocates deal with every day. Inflated costs for repairs, which are passed on to the tenants in the form of rent increase. Lax government oversight over building conditions and rent levels. So for Trump, it began in 1981. He bought a 14-story building on prime real estate that was facing Central Park in New York. His plan was to tear down the building and replace it with a bunch of luxury condos. The problem was, though, there were people living there. You know, that they were rent stabilized tenants. They were living there on a city program. They didn't want to move, obviously. You know what I mean? This was their homes. What is a megalomaniac to do when faced with the needs of multiple families living in an
Force them
existing
out,
building?
dude. You gotta get them out. Get them out.
Get them the fuck out of here.
Get them out of there.
To succeed, Trump played
They were
rough.
terrible tenants. Terrible.
In the tenants' 1982 lawsuits, the tenants said that Trump cut off their hot water and their heat during New York's freezing winters, and he stopped any and all building repairs from taking place.
I wonder how those people must have.
Fake news.
Some of those people lived to see him become president. You know,
Oh, sure.
Like how did that feel? You know, first this fucking guy runs you out of your house, shuts off your fucking heat in the fucking winter. Basically makes conditions so horrible in your home that you have to leave it.
If
he can build luxury condos and get rich, And then, and your kid, who knows what fucking
those
fate
people had
he
kids,
can sign those people to. And then you have to fucking you see him become a fucking billionaire and a celebrity. And then when it seems like life just can't twist the knife any harder, then he becomes president of the fucking United States, and half the country flat out adores him.
I love him.
So
so if they had kids, remember this is 81, 82, they'd be my age, your age.
Yep.
So they'd be more there. I can guarantee you there's probably at least fucking 20 or 30 kids out there that got kicked out of their house or froze out by Donald Trump over the course of a year or two, and remembered it and had to live to see him become the president. That's fucked up. The building superintendent, Anthony Ramirez, swore in court that Trump's building managers gave him explicit instructions. They didn't want any repairs done, no cleaning, no accepting of packages. According to transcripts of a court hearing, a 10-month water pipe leak in apartment 14B got so bad that the two brothers who grew up there saw brown and white mushrooms coming out of their carpet, according to the documents. That's nasty, but the concern with the leaks like that is more mold that starts growing, and that'll kill you. Can kill you. Trump also put out newspaper advertisements in 82 and 83 offering to shelter homeless people in the apartment building. So he used anybody that did clear out, he would move what he perceived as undesirables in, and hey, come be a homeless wino in here. You know what I mean?
What the fuck, dude?
The move was seen by tenants as a ruthless attempt to drive them out, which obviously it was. Trump denied that, of course.
Seen by them, no.
Look, heroin junkies, come out. Yeah, come stay. I got a nice place for you.
And listen to this. At the time, he thought he had the same fucking attitude. Some people think I'm doing a number on the people in this building. That's not true. I just want to help with the homeless problem. It'll take 2 or 3 years to get everybody out, and in the meantime, I've won more vacant apartments for the indigent. So he was just basically you know what I mean? He's just going with this oh yeah, no, this has nothing to do with me trying to drive these people out so I can tear this whole building down. Trump did his best to spend money, to make money, sinking millions of dollars into the lawsuits with the tenants. However, he didn't win because they didn't give up. Trump finally settled with the Tenants Association in 1986. He cut their attorneys a $550,000 check and agreed to let the housing agency monitor repairs for 5 years. So he basically lost.
He did not win there. So that's good.
Yeah, he had to cave.
Which is fake news, right? Because he's the best. Look, he's never lost.
He never loses. He never loses. So
I
guess these people were not actually run out. I mean, a lot of people were run out of their homes by his terrible fucking shit. But I guess ultimately enough people hung in there to fucking beat his ass.
No, the tenants actually banded together, and in this case, apparently had enough money to pool together to fight Trump in court long enough. Well,
they probably found an attorney that would work for free just because he figured this is an easy case and I'll make a bunch of money when the fucking settlement happens.
This is just an article about Fred Trump, who obviously taught Donald everything he knew about being a shitty ass slumlord.
Yeah, now this guy was even a bigger slumlord than Trump because that was his main thing. He was known for that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you wanted to read a little bit of this. It's
President Donald Trump's father was once arrested over the deplorable conditions of his Maryland apartment project. The president has spent the week attacking Rep. Elijah Cummings over poverty in the city of Baltimore, which Trump has called disgusting and a rat and rodent-infested mess. But his own father was taken into police custody for neglecting his property not far away, according to a 1976 report by the Washington Post. Fred Trump failed to pay for repairs mandated by local officials in Prince George County, which he owned apartment buildings in Seat Pleasant, and his housing license was revoked, preventing him from signing leases with new tenants. The elder Trump agreed to fly to Maryland to meet local officials on September 29th, 1976, and he was arrested on arrival. We probably haven't issued 4 arrest warrants in the past 5 years, said Joseph Healy, the county's housing inspector supervisor at the time of his arrest. The Trump Organization, whose president at the time was Donald Trump, essentially stopped making repairs on these buildings after white residents fled to the suburbs and the apartments were largely rented out by black tenants. 3 years later, the Department of Justice sued the Trump Organization for discrimination.
So the whole just stop repairing it gag, learned it from good old Pops here.
That's Papa taught him that one. Yeah. Just no. But you want to get them out? Just don't pay for repairs. Don't make their conditions livable.
The Trumps are pieces of shit, but there might be some people that rival the Trumps. This is Kip and Nicole Macy.
These are some ugly motherfuckers. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
The kind of fucking look on this bitch's face.
Oblong head, and I don't know. This couple tried to essentially do the same thing as Donald Trump did. They just went in far too aggressively and got too emotionally invested in terrorizing their tenants. So this happened in 2005. Kip and Nicole Macy bought an apartment building in San Francisco. Their plan was to kick out the tenants, same thing, renovate the building, same thing, and sell the apartment units for a profit, same fucking thing. After they bought the building, the couple realized that they could not legally evict the building's residents, so they became the landlords from hell. The Macys threatened their tenants, stole from them, poured ammonia on their belongings, changed their locks, boarded up windows, cut their telephone lines, and shut off their gas and power. The renters, knowing their rights, refused to leave, and they hired lawyers. Mrs. Macy created a fraudulent email account and, pretending to be one of the tenants, sent an email to the tenant's lawyer saying his services were no longer needed.
Oh, my God.
She later sent another email threatening to kidnap and dismember the lawyer's children in an effort to make the tenant, Scott Morrow, look unstable.
What the fuck, dude? So these idiots had the money to buy an apartment in apartment building in San Francisco, did not realize they couldn't just fucking, like, what was their plan? Oh, we buy it, and then we just kick everyone out. Yeah. They have no legal recourse. It's like, that's not how it works. You can't just evict people for nothing. Like, we want to become rich landlord assholes, so you guys are just going to have to move out. Like, you know what's fucking crazy, too? They already had a bunch of people that would have made money anyways. Like, I don't even get it. They could have just increased the rent over time and got rid of them that way.
They probably had a bunch of people. There's a way, like, if you have a person that signed a 3-year lease or whatever, and you give them notice that at the end of the lease, you're you know what I mean? They can.
Yeah, you're not going to renew it.
You can that's where you can call and have a person evicted out of a fucking place. But they weren't willing to wait for these leases to expire. They wanted to immediately, like, they wanted to do the old flip where it's like, you buy a piece of shit and then, like, by the end of the 30-minute reality TV show, it looks like a brand new fucking place. You know what I mean?
Well, then build a new one or buy one that's empty, because you can't just throw people out of their fucking homes
with no thought for the people that were living there, of course.
Yeah.
So let me see. Her husband was a pretty unstable piece of shit as well. Macy, the husband, Mr. Macy, threatened the building manager with a semi-automatic weapon, kicked one of their tenants in the ribs, and dealt with a tenant represented by a lawyer in a very horror movie-esque fashion. Kip Macy took a saw and attempted to saw up through the floor of Morrow's living room. Morrow and a friend were sitting on the couch when he saw the blade come out of the floorboards.
What the fuck?
Dude, if someone did this to me, man, fuck, I would just shoot that motherfucker. Fuck that shit. These people, as far as I'm concerned, these people being alive is a fucking miracle.
Yeah. So Morrow grabbed a hammer and smashed the saw. The Macys then realized that the tenants would never leave on their own, eventually, I guess. And the couple asked a building inspector how they could make the apartment complex unstable.
Fuck is wrong with these people? Unstable like you? The fucking building inspector should have been like, unstable like you motherfuckers?
Yeah. They followed his instructions, so I don't know who this fucking guy was. Well, he's like, well, if you really wanted to make this thing rickety and fall down, you just fuck this up here and cut this pylon there.
No problem.
They had their workers cut load-bearing beams in the basement. The apartment building was then declared uninhabitable, and the tenants were forced out. The Macys were arrested in 2008, but they were released on bail and fled to Italy in 2010. After almost 3 years, the couple was finally extradited all the way back to San Francisco in 2013. They pled guilty to 4 felony counts. They each received sentences of 4 years and 4 months in prison. Seems a little light, given that they tried to murder everybody in their building.
These motherfuckers should be... There should be a movie about these fucking people.
Yeah.
This should be a fucking motion picture event of the summer or something. So.
Agreed. So
like
pretty
a Netflix
crazy
movie or something. This is fucking bad shit. I just saw the scene in my head, with the fucking saw. You're
gonna move out now. I mean,
what the fuck?
They went so far. They fucking made the building uninhabitable in some crazy scheme to be like, we'll make it uninhabitable. Then they'll have to move out. Then we build our luxury apartments after we've committed like 18 felonies apiece.
Pretty fucking crazy.
These must have been like rich kids, right? Because they had this money and they were like,
then they
super
fled to
entitled
Italy,
and they
yeah.
fucking I mean,
We can skip through these. I kind of pulled a couple of articles, maybe if we had time, but I covered what I really wanted to cover. Skip to the last picture there.
All right.
So what's the solution to all this, I guess, is what I really want to say, because obviously there's a problem here that's brewing, that has in the past and probably could be in the future.
I think I said here, everyone just lives on these streets here. Problem solved.
There's a precedent of tenants coming together to organize against slumlords and landlords, the most greedy of them anyway. These efforts have been most effective when tenants have constructed multiracial coalitions and have relied on tactics from rent strikes to eviction blockades to cooperative housing to strategic litigation. So there's some precedent for this. From December 26, 1907 to January 9th, 1908, 10,000 tenants living in New York City's Lower East Side took part in a historic rent strike. This was during an economic depression, which caused mass unemployment and grinding poverty. Landlords tried to hike rent by 33% to cover their end of the costs. With their cry of "fight the landlord" as they had the czar, the tenants won a partial victory with rent significantly reduced for 2,000 households. The movement established a tradition of militant working class housing campaigns that eventually contributed to winning vital rent controls that still protect millions of people in New York City to this day. In fact, it was those very rent controls that helped the people that were in Trump's slum fight him. So there you go. Jason Korn, New York City's worst landlord, that we didn't get a chance to talk about earlier, but maybe we'll do a second shitty landlord.
But just say if he's the worst one there, he's got to be pretty fucking bad, right? So,
he was only forced to perform repairs after a rent strike by his tenants. Unfortunately, many of them set aside money for lawsuit settlements and fines as part of the budget. So it's not as big of a deterrent as it could be. Like, a lot of these people are rich and they have money to spend on this type of shit, obviously. But to some landlords, it is a great deterrent. Hey, if you're going to fucking file a lawsuit, I'm going to have to pay money when I could just be getting rent from you at a lower rate. Okay, fine. I'll keep the rent the same. This has happened over and over and over. So that's all I could find, though, as far as like fighting this without going full Zao de
right,
Dong.
without going Zao de Dong.
Yeah. So if you guys have any thoughts about it, I'd like to hear it in the comments. Let me know what you thought. And if you liked this episode, there's an endless list of scumfuck landlords for us to look at, including Paul's ego. He was the worst one.
Yeah,
worst one yet.
Yeah.
Deep Fat Fried. Deep Fat Fried. Deep Fat Fried.